It's May 22nd, 2018, the 19th day of the Kilauea volcanic eruption, and this is Good Prevails. This video is entitled The Metaphor of the Kilauea Volcanic Eruption, Deception, and Cognitive Dissonance. You're going to have to imagine the soundtrack to this video, which is Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks, because that's what's happening now in Hawaii, and the world is going to flood. Let's have a look at the Big Island Video News Channel's video from yesterday, May 19th, called Geologists' Biggest Worry, People Will Be Trapped. She begins, my biggest worry is people being trapped, honestly. It's a very dynamic situation, she says. 20 flow at the start of we were not expecting a little perched lava channel yesterday and feeding stuff mostly east, and then the south levee broke. That's when it flooded around the east side of Lonnie Puna Gardens, she says, and by the way, Lonnie means heaven. She goes on, to me this is a very scary scenario, and that's what concerns me most, is that people might be trapped by something like that. She then goes on to talk about the moving river of lava's speed as it moves to cut off this area, describing it as, at their rough estimate, about a half a mile an hour. And she says that's hard to get around quickly if you don't know it's coming. Well, I can imagine so, especially if you're in bed asleep and your children are too. I can tell you, and I'm speaking now, with certainty that after having lived there in that tropical rainforest jungle of vegetation growing over previously laid, dangerous to traverse, cut you like a knife lava rock, with no trails, no street lights, pouring rain, slippery vegetation, if mud everywhere, if people are trapped there, and I fear now that some will become trapped there, it'll surely be a desperately terrifying situation. Everyone on that side of the island, from Kau to Kau, should evacuate, in my opinion. Even if they were to be alerted to its coming, the chances are high that quite a large part of the population will be unable to escape. Why are quote-unquote, the officials willing to take a risk of allowing people to be basically burned alive? Why are they taking that risk? The civil defense notice says residents should be ready to leave the area with little to no notice. Tell me what no notice means. With no notice, how can they leave? In the latest Civil Defense Bulletin, they're advised to leave or to shelter in place. Come on, shelter in place. Does that mean be cut off from escape and be at risk of being burned alive? How much risk are they willing to put their residents in? Evidently a lot, based on the meaning behind their announcements and their actions. Really, it's just another social experiment like Facebook was and still is. And people still use it as they feed their souls into the artificial intelligence matrix. But this social experiment in Hawaii has immediate, horrifying, and very physical results. And who can't stop looking at it? How many people write in comments that they're obsessed with Kilauea? Have you seen that? It's like rubbernecking, but worse. There's nothing benevolent and no love of a goddess in it. The eruption has been manipulated by the elite into another mass ritual. The levee will break. It's raining fire, people. The only access that they're currently allowing to the public to the lava, as stated by the USGS woman interviewed in that video, is based on a profit revenue from tourism, in that they're allowing the lava viewing charter boats to approach the lava flowing into the ocean at a distance of 300 meters. Did you hear that? They're letting tourists get into small boats, go into the water near the lava. Now, I knew a guy who was a ship captain and drove one of those boats, and he was actually an alcoholic. And I would never have gotten in a boat with this old man, this retired Navy man. The standards are very low there, but I digress. Okay, so what they're doing with that, and it's pretty heinous that they're allowing, they're still profiting from this, is extremely hazardous, because those cliffs, which are incidentally parallel to and delineate the Helena slump, which I talked about in my previous video, those cliffs could break off at any time, causing a disastrous wave and the chance of overturning and capsizing the boats. Also, the lays, which is the gaseous product of the molten lava as it mixes with the ocean water when it falls in, and creates a team of microscopic glassy particles, think crystalline diamond cutting structures, which cause immediate respiratory inefficiency due to their literal slice and dicing of the alveoli of the lungs and mucosal membranes of the eyes, nose, mouth, trachea, and the toxic gases, sulfuric and hydrochloric acid gases, which are in extremely high concentrations, and when inhaled, cause immediate chemical burns to the eyes and the skin, the mucous membranes. Think Auschwitz gas chambers on steroids, okay? And I wrote that. That didn't come from a cut and paste from the web. So tourism is still permitted. They can get within, what, 1,200, 900, so 900 meters? That's less than a mile, and the winds travel quickly there. Insanity. But they'll take this risk. And you know what else they'll take? They'll take tribal lands when they want, destroying indigenous peoples and their livelihood and the cultures for profit. Not many realize it to be a fact, but many, many Hawaiians still hunt for their food on a daily basis. They hunt in the jungle, they hunt pig, they hunt chicken, and they fish. They're consummate fishermen. They fish in the oceans and in the bays. So now they can't even get their food. But tourists can go and they can rake in money for that. So are we witnessing a systematic genocide here, opportunized with a slow and haphazard response to the Kilauea volcanic eruption? I think that USGS employee who I just referenced, the woman who is afraid people are going to become trapped, I think she should be commended as a hero. People will sell out others for a salary and a vacation. That's what we're seeing. But this event is biblical in proportion. And if the Helena slump that the government tells people is a rumor, and it's not, if the Helena slump is actually true, and it is, it will create a domino effect. So hang with me here. Yesterday was day 18 of the eruption. Or was it 19? Anyway, and it took 17 days for them to acknowledge publicly they were just addressing what they call quenching the geothermal wells at the Puna geothermal venture. The lunacy of pumping highly combustible gases into spongy bedrock on the edge of an active volcano blows the mind. It is not an overstatement to contend that the powers that be truly do not value human lives. Until Governor Ige forced them to, hundreds of thousands of tanked gallons of explosive pentane gas weren't even trucked off the PGV property, less than a mile from Leilani Garden Fishers. If the money's spent on their agendas in true Orwellian fashion, if all of the untold trillions were spent on doing good things for the population, hunger, disease, homeless, and poverty would end. But in their true Orwellian fashion, via controls including television and now social media, engineering, 5G, vaccines, regulatory, administrative, and protective agencies, and now the volcano, and any other weaponized weather they want to activate, which they are. We've now begun the hurricane season early. I'm going to get to that. So all of this is a plan to destroy the earth and its people. And in truth, all of the government programs and agencies are named exactly the opposite of what they are. And they're a threat. We're a threat to their agenda. That's what 5G is for, to sterilize us, to drop us. It's a military weapon. When I returned to Hawaii last year after being away for 5 years, I saw 5G towers towering high in the jungles, deep in the island's jungle. They are serious about the controls they're imposing. What do these towers cost? They've got to be expensive. The island doesn't even have infrastructure for sanitation and hygiene. There's no running water except at some county filling stations and businesses and homes within the small towns or the few larger towns. Most locals I know, when they got the water from the municipal water from the local pumping stations, they wouldn't even drink it unless it was boiled. Local businesses, if they allow someone to use a restroom, rarely provide hot water in the hot water faucets. In the town of Pahoa, where people have evacuated to, there are basically only 2 bathrooms that people use unless they eat at a restaurant or drink at a bar. One is at a little cafe, and one is behind the Malama Shopping Center. That one's terribly disgusting. And these are like 1 toilet bathrooms that hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people use every day. I kid you not. Maybe there's okay, to be honest, maybe there's 4 or 5. 4 or 5 restrooms, people. I hope you're beginning to get the picture, because I'm trying to paint it for you, how desperate and challenging it is there. Okay, so if they even allow someone to use a restroom, no hot water. People go to the public swimming pool in Pahoa to take a shower and to have a bowel movement on a real toilet and be able to wash their hands, use toilet paper, etc. It's that bad. There are hippie camps, communes, which are basically allowed to exist despite persistent code violations, because that's one way for the local governments to keep undesirables, hippies, haoles, the white people, non-natives, out of the way. Those who come to the island looking for cheap living and maybe work trade for a place to stay, they lay their head because they can't afford to rent a conventional place to live on places in other people's properties. They'll rent tents, shacks, old buses, and vans. They use outdoors as a toilet, defecating and urinating in buckets of sawdust, and then that's composted for gardening. Gardening. And the vegetables are then sold at the farmers markets and people eat them. Human waste. Animal waste. I have never seen anything like it, and it's horrifying. Multiply this with the displacement from Kilauea, and you might begin to get the picture of what the authorities are sweeping under the rug. Those living off-grid are, by large, equally challenged. We're talking now in normal daily life, minus, not even including this Kilauea threat. They're equally challenged, just washing their hands in pans of standing rainwater. Staph is epidemic, as are parasites. Pigs and chickens run loose all over the island. Human and animal waste covers the surface. The bacteria and the parasites and their larvae in it are spread everywhere. The layer of soil is very thin. It never freezes. It's an incubator. Basically, Hawaii is a third world country. People from the mainland and the rest of the world do not realize this. And it's a sin and a travesty that this is hidden, and that the populace there, the people that have dignity, the beautiful people, have to live this way. So back to Kilauea, the lack of a legitimate and timely response to protect this panic threat really doesn't surprise me, given the few facts that I just shared with you. You see, what the rest of the world doesn't realize amidst all this press and disinformation is that the big island of Hawaii is really more a wilderness than a civilization as the Western world knows it. It's seen as a tropical paradise, an Eden on earth, and it has its beauties, believe me, and I love it. And the people, I love them too. But, and I say but, poverty is very high there. A major portion of the population is on EBT. It's more primitive than not. And moving away from the few major roads alongside which the power and the utility lines run, after that, the residents live off-grid. Water is collected in catchment tanks. Most people use old swimming pools. The water collected is more often than not infected with various breeding stages of insects and snails that carry rat lungworm disease, which is epidemic amongst all the islands now. The government authorities deny that and undertreat it. People die of this. The feces of the frogs and the mongooses, the rats and the mice that overrun the island, and all the other parasites, roundworms, pinworms, nematodes, and tapeworms are in the soil and in the water. You can see parasites in people's eyes. You can see them in their elevated snaking veins along their arms and their legs, the temples of their eyes, on their face. And people, the eyes of dogs and cats have this cloudy, milky thing in them, and people say, oh, that's from fire ants biting them. That is not true. It's parasites in their eyes. Medical system, total denial. And now, with Kilauea and the already perilous nature of living on the island, everything is magnified. No one talks about this, regardless of Kilauea. I feel that all of this is something people need to know. They need some real help here. And there needs to be a reality call. And that's why I'm telling you all of this, and I've agonized over this. I can't stress enough that the desperation of the situation in Hawaii is a metaphor for what the entire world is going through when the levee breaks. And it's breaking. And the fact is, living off-grid in the land of little sanitation is a hazardous venture. We're only terribly worried by this Kilauea eruption and the inundation of nearby Pahoa and Hilo with displaced residents. The homeless already line the doorways and makeshift sleeping camps nightly in the area of the tourist shops overlooking Hilo Bay. Kona is touted as one of the best cities to be homeless in America. Google that. So really, the impact of Kilauea is a metaphor for God's judgment. Simultaneously, ufologists feel that Hawaii, and specifically the ocean and the mouths of the Kilauea and Mauna Loa volcanoes, are portals, extraterrestrial portals. That's not only a metaphor, but fulfillment of prophecy. All over the world, volcanoes are waking up. Weather events happen as they have never happened before. Entire continents are splitting apart. And soon the Earth will undergo a complete pole shift. The day after Kilauea first erupted, almost 3 weeks ago, I made a video about the downplaying by the authority. I took it down, actually. I regret that now. I made a video about the downplaying by the authorities regarding the Helena slump and its far-ranging effects on California, with earthquakes and a tsunami coming from Hawaii. And the earthquakes, of course, would activate the San Andreas Fault and the Cascadia subduction zone in the North California Pacific Range. And Arizona, as I speak, is preparing for a 4-day exercise to accept 400,000 evacuees from Southern California, fleeing these, according to the USGS and Civil Defense in Hawaii, rumored catastrophic events. Yet they're having an exercise for 4 days about it. And HAARP and extra low frequency pulses are continuing in the upper atmosphere This is being done as weaponized weather by the government directly over the volcanoes and seismic and continental plate faults. You can look all of that up online on weather maps. The impending, and I must say, Never Lose Truth just did an excellent video on that, so go to her channel. I'll have a computer soon. The impending impact of the eruption on the island, the nature of the Kalapana area, the vulnerabilities of the community, and why many were resistant to leave because of fear of theft is another subject that I approached in the video I put up. Theft is a huge issue there because people were very poor. So also I talked about the edification of their false goddess Pele, whom they venerate. People say that the volcano is making new land. It's making new land. It's destroying people. By itself as an isolated incident, maybe it could be seen as something different. I saw Kilauea at night. Every night I went to Uncle Robert's from a distance. You know, this is different. This is a cataclysmic event, and again, it is a metaphor. The legend of Pele, bottom line here is this: the legend of Pele grew out of a desire within mankind to have an explanation of the world surrounding them and their place within it. Now that's really the explanation for most religions. You would probably agree. But ascribing a benevolence behind the utter destruction couched in terms like "this is land creation" is really only a rationalization to recontextualize and make more palatable a terrifying truth. Everyone knows that Disney's Moana is Pele, another legitimizing normalization of the worship of false gods and idols being forced down the throats of children. As a matter of fact, the backpack that you see here was purchased at the Walmart in Hilo. And that copy of 1984 has been to Hawaii and back. The long game of the powers that be certainly manipulate the sheeple with predictive programming. Disney's Moana movie fits into their game plan perfectly, just as Geostorm does, Independence Day, Blade Runner, Mad Max, The Matrix. I could go on. I'm sure you can fill in many you know. What gets me is that they think people will always take the blue pill, and that's the pill that keeps you a sheep. There can be change. I encourage you to keep listening. Know that I respect you, Hawaii. I just hate to witness victimization. And the authorities hide the cold, hard truth. They hide it with chemtrails, which you have even there. They hide it with being caught up in the distractions of the rat race. They hide it with trauma. They hide it with systematic ritual abuse. People go to Hawaii to get away from the Matrix. That's another sad irony here. Prepare yourselves, everyone, to survive the worst. And if you're on the Big Island and anywhere near Kilauea and haven't evacuated yet and want to stay alive, and I pray you do, remain safe while doing so. Get as far away as you can from the volcanoes. Much of what I say might be fantastical to those who would, upon hearing what I have to say, classify and dismiss me as a conspiracy theorist. Or if you're beginning to wake up and awaken to the global deception that pre-exists all known and thought wrongly for its deliberately suppressed history, you'll know that the elite controllers of this planet are the ones who play the long game, the Dungeons and Dragon masters. Patiently and with unparalleled evil cunning, they weave their game plan and their rituals into all things, making it look natural. This is the matrix we live in. The cognitive dissonance is very hard to break out of. More than anything, you have to be safe, be honest, and you have to be good. Evil is out there. especially in especially in the ones who purport themselves to be caring for you. And in the case of Kilauea, are moving very slowly to protect you. Very slowly. The levee, I would dare say, is broken. Fire is falling from the sky. So stay strong, stay safe, and stay good. No matter what happens, we are our souls. I hold all of yours in my heart with love. Good prevails.